Are you familiar with the Broadway musical Gypsy? It's based on the 1957 memoirs of striptease artist Gypsy Rose Lee, featuring a controlling stage mother who lied about her daughter's age, pushing her to perform against her wishes. Little did we know that years later, a girl named Gypsy Rose would be born with not only the same name, but also a similarly controlling mother. What starts as a seemingly heartwarming tale of a mother caring for her medically fragile daughter takes a dark turn, revealing a web of lies, abuse, and ultimately, a gruesome murder. Claudine Dee Dee Blanchard was born in Chack Bay, Louisiana, to parents Claude Anthony Petre Sr. and Emma Lois Gisclair. Even in her childhood, Dee Dee drew attention due to her peculiar and unkind behavior, prompting negative remarks from her own family. Laura Petre, her stepmother, shared in the HBO documentary Mommy, Dead and Dearest, stating, "She was a very filthy person. If things didn't go her way, she'd ensure you paid, and we certainly did pay, a lot." Rolling Stone reported alleged instances of Dee Dee stealing items from her family, along with accusations of credit card fraud and writing bad checks. In a startling revelation, Laura accused Dee Dee of attempting to kill her by lacing her food with the weed killer Roundup. Although Laura survived the poisoning, she had to undergo a 9-month recovery. The family's accusations extend further, asserting that Dee Dee was responsible for her own mother Emma's death. Gypsy Rose's stepmother, Christy Blanchard, supports this claim, stating, "The day her mom died, Dee Dee was in the house somewhere, and Dee Dee was starving her. Dee Dee wasn't giving her anything to eat." Dee Dee later distanced herself from her family, working as a nurse's aide and eventually dating Rod Blanchard, who was 7 years her junior. At 24, she became pregnant with her daughter, Gypsy Rose. Gypsy's father, Rod, married Dee Dee at 17 to better care for the new baby, but the couple separated when Rod realized the gravity of the situation. "I woke up on my 18th birthday and realized I wasn't where I was supposed to be. I wasn't in love with her, really. I knew I got married for the wrong reasons," he explained to BuzzFeed. Dee Dee and Gypsy moved from Louisiana to Springfield, Missouri, shortly after Hurricane Katrina in 2005. For 7 years before the murder, Dee Dee and Gypsy Rose Blanchard lived in a small pink bungalow on West Volunteer Way in Springfield, Missouri. Remembered as sweet and generous, Dee Dee, though unemployed, served as a full-time caretaker for her daughter, Gypsy Rose. Dee Dee would host movie nights for neighborhood children, using a projector on her house, charging for concessions to fund Gypsy's treatments. Building close relationships with neighbors like Amy Pinegar, Dee Dee shared her life story, portraying Gypsy's father as a deadbeat alcoholic drug abuser who had mocked his daughter's disabilities, who never provided support, especially during the hardships after Hurricane Katrina, where Dee Dee and Gypsy had lost everything. It was a blessing that a doctor at a rescue shelter had helped them get to the Ozarks. Born on July 27, 1991, in Golden Meadow, Louisiana, Gypsy Rose Blanchard entered the world to parents Dee Dee and Rod. Despite the separation of the new parents, Dee Dee and Rod maintained communication about Gypsy's development. At just 3 months old, Gypsy Rose's alleged medical conditions came to Rod's attention. Dee Dee began diagnosing her with various illnesses, including sleep apnea, epilepsy, cancer, muscular dystrophy, and ear and eye problems. Contrary to these claims, Gypsy was perfectly healthy, but Dee Dee was convinced of her daughter's supposed ailments. Dee Dee's actions suggest Munchausen syndrome by proxy, a psychological disorder where an individual fabricates or exaggerates a child's medical symptoms to garner attention and sympathy. Over time, Dee Dee informed Rod of Gypsy Rose's numerous health issues, incorporating sleep apnea and a chromosomal defect. Initially, Rod trusted Dee Dee's efforts as she appeared hyper-vigilant in addressing Gypsy Rose's problems and consistently sought medical care when necessary. Rod had no reason to suspect that Dee Dee was intentionally subjecting their daughter to unnecessary and painful medical interventions for non-existent illnesses. Despite Gypsy always being in a wheelchair and her mom maintaining such close and strict supervision, she had a friend to whom she confided, Alea Woodmansee, Amy Pinegar's daughter. Alea felt like a big sister to Gypsy, and the feeling was mutual. However, they were seldom alone together, as Gypsy's mother was consistently by her side. So when Gypsy confided in Alea, it was through a secret Facebook account under the name Emma Rose. "This is my personal account. My mom is still overprotective, so she doesn't know about this account," Gypsy wrote in October 2014. She then disclosed that she had met a man on a Christian singles site, confessing her love for him to Alea. Gypsy had not yet informed her mother about this. She acknowledged that Dee Dee wouldn't approve, emphasizing that she wasn't allowed to date, even though she longed for a boyfriend like other girls her age. Gypsy and her online boyfriend had been communicating for over 2 years, and he didn't mind that she was in a wheelchair. Gypsy planned to marry him, and they shared a Catholic faith, even deciding on names for their future children. She devised an elaborate plan for Dee Dee to casually meet Nick at the local movie theater, hoping they could then openly acknowledge their relationship. Contrary to everyone's belief in her mother's portrayal of having the mind of a 7-year-old, Gypsy was not as naive as perceived. Alea was aware that Gypsy had attempted to meet men online before, and despite Dee Dee's narrative, thoughts about romance and sex were emerging. Gypsy expressed her concerns in October 2014, stating, "I'm 18. Nick is 24, highlighting the 6-year age difference with her online boyfriend. Alea was also worried about Dee Dee, who had confronted her in 2011 about her chats with Gypsy, accusing her of corrupting a child. Despite promising not to disclose the content, Dee Dee confiscated Gypsy's phone and computer for a while. Gypsy, resourceful as always, managed to find alternative ways to communicate with Alea. However, their interactions became less frequent, and after the messages about Nick Godejohn in the fall of 2014, Alea didn't hear from Gypsy again. Living in Louisiana, Dee Dee Blanchard consistently took Gypsy Rose to the hospital, seemingly for every imaginable medical issue. Initiating Gypsy Rose on anti-seizure medications, Dee Dee reported seizures to doctors and insisted on diagnosing her with muscular dystrophy despite contrary test results. In the documentary Mommy Dead and Dearest, Dee Dee fabricated a range of illnesses, including leukemia, asthma, and mental incapacity equivalent to a 7-year-old due to alleged premature birth brain damage. She subjected Gypsy to a feeding tube, enforced wheelchair use despite Gypsy's ability to walk, shaved her head for a false appearance of chemotherapy, and administered medications inducing symptoms of fabricated conditions. Additionally, Dee Dee manipulated Gypsy's birth certificate, falsely listing her as 4 years younger. Dee Dee deceived doctors with an extensive knowledge of medical terminology, likely stemming from her past as a nurse's aide. Evading medical paperwork requirements by citing Hurricane Katrina's supposed destruction of Gypsy Rose's records, Dee Dee and Gypsy received a new home in Springfield, Missouri, courtesy of Habitat for Humanity. Despite suspicions from some doctors, the story of a terminally ill daughter and her single mother attracted attention, leading to various benefits such as free flights and trips. Authorities believed Dee Dee's deception was financially motivated, as she and Gypsy received a house, backstage access to concerts, and paid trips to Disney World. To sustain the ruse, Dee Dee continued to subject Gypsy to medical abuse, including physical harm, restraint, and starvation. She isolated Gypsy from family members who might question her health, frequently changing doctors to avoid suspicion. Pediatric neurologist Bernardo Flasterstein, one of Gypsy's former physicians, suspected Munchausen's by proxy and expressed regret for not being more aggressive in alerting authorities. She got so wound up in it, it was like a tornado got started. And then once she was in so deep that there was no escaping. One lie had to cover another lie, had to cover another lie, and that was her way of life. The intricate web of lies that Dee Dee constructed eventually culminated in her tragic and violent demise. Throughout the 2 decades of abuse that Gypsy endured, Dee Dee managed to deceive everyone around her, including Gypsy's father, Rod Blanchard, whom she reportedly kept at a distance. Contrary to Dee Dee's false claims, Rod wasn't the deadbeat drug addict who abandoned his daughter. According to Rod himself, he began dating Dee Dee in high school, and they married after Dee Dee became pregnant at 24. However, by the time Rod turned 18, he realized he wasn't in love with Dee Dee and got married for the wrong reasons. Despite the separation, Rod didn't abandon Gypsy. He continued to pay $1,200 a month in child support, even after Gypsy turned 18, providing gifts like a television set and a Nintendo Wii. Rod and his now wife Christy visited Gypsy regularly in the first 10 years of her life. However, Dee Dee's explicit demand to be with Gypsy 24/7 and impromptu hospitalizations, supposedly for Gypsy, became a common excuse to cancel planned visits. Dee Dee was explicit about Gypsy's alleged medical conditions, intimidating Rod and Christy. Rod revealed that Dee Dee was always afraid he would bond with Gypsy, creating a fine line he had to walk. Since Gypsy's crime and imprisonment, Rod has shown determination to make up for lost time. He initiated an online petition signed by over 18,000 people seeking to reduce Gypsy's 10-year sentence. Despite the committed crime, both Rod and Christy expressed their support for Gypsy's parole release, potentially in 2024. They plan to offer Gypsy a home and guide her on the right path once she's released. Rod, while acknowledging past guilt, is proud of the improved relationship with Gypsy and looks forward to building on the foundation they've started. The communication between them has improved significantly, and Rod is excited about Gypsy's achievements in school, including pursuing her GED. On June 14, 2015, disturbing posts surfaced on Dee Dee's Facebook page, causing concern among her friends. Alarmed by the content, they contacted the police for a welfare check on Dee Dee and Gypsy Rose at their Springfield, Missouri home. The grim discovery awaited the officers as they entered the residence, the lifeless body of Dee Dee Blanchard in her bedroom, stabbed 17 times in the back. Although she had been dead for days, Gypsy Rose was nowhere to be found, triggering widespread panic in the local community, familiar with her as the young, seemingly frail girl dependent on multiple medications for survival. Fears arose that without her mother's care, Gypsy Rose's life could be in jeopardy. Fortunately, a crucial tip from Gypsy Rose's friend, Alea Woodman C., revealed her secret online relationship with a boyfriend, guiding the police in their search. The police tracked the IP address of the disturbing messages on Dee Dee Blanchard's Facebook page, leading them to Nicholas Godejohn's home in Wisconsin. Shockingly, they discovered Gypsy Rose miraculously standing and walking on her own. Further investigation and eventual confessions from the young lovers exposed a detailed plot to kill Dee Dee and liberate Gypsy Rose from her medical exploitation. Gypsy Rose asserted in the documentary that Dee Dee subjected her to physical abuse in private, and some unnecessary medical treatments led to the decay of her teeth. Gypsy recounted an incident where her attempts to communicate and meet up with an older man she met at a sci-fi convention resulted in Dee Dee destroying her computer and cell phone, restraining her to the bed with a leash attached to handcuffs. Gypsy Rose initially connected with Nicholas Godejohn on a Christian singles dating site, communicating online for 2 years before meeting in person. Their relationship developed with Godejohn introducing BDSM themes. Gypsy referred to him as her master and herself as his slave. Godejohn believed they were soulmates from the beginning, planning a future together as a couple. They had their first in-person date in 2015, watching Cinderella, and their second meeting in June 2015 involved Godejohn traveling from Wisconsin to Missouri to kill Dee Dee. Prosecutors claim Godejohn's motive wasn't to save Gypsy, but simply for the couple to be together, and Dee Dee was the only thing that stood in their way. Prosecutors argue that Godejohn was a willing participant. Facebook chats and other online activity will show Godejohn was a willing participant from the time Gypsy first proposed the idea a year earlier. While Godejohn's attorneys acknowledge the murder, they claim his autism affected his mental capacity for first-degree murder, citing challenges with premeditation. On the night of the murder, Gypsy and Dee Dee shared manicures, after which Gypsy put her mother to bed, promising to be a good girl. Godejohn entered the home, and Gypsy hid in a bathroom while he fatally stabbed Dee Dee. What happened next depends on which of them you ask. Godejohn claims consensual while Gypsy alleges that Godejohn violated her. In interrogation tapes, Godejohn reportedly considered violating Dee Dee's corpse.
You had mentioned that you'd like to rape her mom. Yeah, at one point I was thinking about it.
Gypsy claimed she made a deal to avoid this by letting him violate her instead of her mom. I made a deal with him. I'd let him violate me, and then he wouldn't do that to my mom. After stealing $4,000, they went to a Days Inn, ate brownies, and mailed the murder weapon to Godejohn's family in Wisconsin before fleeing by bus, according to a search warrant obtained by the Springfield News Leader. Nick was happy to do whatever Gypsy wanted, said public defender Andrew Mead, who also pointed out that Gypsy stole the knife used as the murder weapon. He was always compliant. Mead described Godejohn as a man with few friends, who only ever held one job and spent almost all of his free time on the internet, which he called his outlet to the world. The defense fought against the inclusion of portions of Godejohn's recorded confession to police, in which he said he considered violating Dee Dee Blanchard before he killed her, arguing that it was irrelevant since he didn't follow through. Instead, he and Gypsy had an intercourse in the house after Blanchard was dead. The judge ultimately sided with the prosecution, which argued this portion of his confession was evidence of premeditation. Gypsy was sentenced to 10 years in prison for the murder of Dee Dee. In a 2016 interview with Dr. Phil McGraw, Gypsy said she had complicated feelings about her sentence, though she wasn't sure what a just punishment would necessarily be in her situation. I believe firmly that no matter what, murder is not okay. I do believe that I do deserve to spend some time in prison for that crime, she explained. But I also understand why it happened, and I don't believe that I'm in the right place to get the help that I need. Godejohn, meanwhile, was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Gypsy was released from Chillicothe Correctional Center in Missouri on December 28, 2023, after serving 85% of her 10-year sentence. Ahead of her release, she expressed readiness for freedom. Gypsy had 2 known romantic relationships while in prison. Initially engaged to Ken, they briefly called off their engagement but later reunited. However, in June 2022, Gypsy married Ryan Scott Anderson of St. Charles, Louisiana. Since her release from prison, the excitement has been unfolding on Instagram and TikTok, where Blanchard has rapidly become an overnight sensation, currently amassing 8 million and 9.2 million followers, respectively. While these social media accounts were established in the months leading up to her December 28th release to promote an upcoming Lifetime docuseries, Blanchard gained the most attention with her first selfie of freedom, drawing thousands of comments from well-wishers, including the official Instagram account for Bratz dolls and influencers and well-known social media personalities like Tana Mongeau, Trisha Paytas, Sam and Colby, and more. Gypsy Rose Blanchard is currently leveraging her social media platforms to convey appreciation to her fans and to boost awareness of her Lifetime docuseries, a 6-hour compilation of prison interviews set for release on January 5, 2024, along with an upcoming book.